All right, good morning and welcome to day 74 of the online AWD 1100, or I'm sorry, 1000 Web Development Technologies class. Today we are going to complete the React student app. In fact, I have completed it and I'm going to show you what I did and what I didn't do yesterday. All right, then we're going to attempt to deploy the app both to the internet using both GitHub Pages and Netlify. Now, I went out yesterday and was looking online, watched a few videos, and I actually like this one. This is from a guy named David Gray, and he's really good. I mean, I don't know how he makes a living, but he puts junk out on the internet all the time, and it's free. All right, he's got a 9-hour React course out there. Someday, after I retire, probably, I'm gonna go through his whole course because it's just really good. I've gone through a couple of the lessons in there, but he's got this thing. It is 15 minutes and 41 seconds long, and in about the first half, or little less than the first half, he deploys an app to Netlify. Then in the last half or so, he deploys an app GitHub Pages. So I'm going to attempt to follow his steps. I've written them down, sent them to you this morning, and I'm going to attempt to do the same thing. So that's him right there. All right. And again, as it says, this was I think the last lesson in his class, how to deploy a React app to GitHub Pages and Netlify. All right. So that's what we're going to be going through. When we get done with all that, I'm going to go over with you. That's interesting. All right. I'm going to go over with you the book that we're going to use for the C# class next semester. Those of you who will be in that class will look at that, and I'll tell you quickly a few things that I'd recommend you do before the beginning of the spring semester. And if you don't know it, I believe at least the spring semester starts 4 weeks from today. I believe we're starting on a Wednesday. If that changes, I'll let you know. Otherwise, go out to rankin.edu or you'll probably get an email from somebody at Rankin. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by bringing up the project that we've been working on. All right, this React student app, which is not there. It's right here. All right, I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to bring it up in code and I'm going to run it right away to show you what we're hopefully going to get to by the end of the period today. So let me run this. Make sure I've got nothing running right now. All right. Now, what I'm about to show you is what I asked and I wanted us to do yesterday, but we had some problems doing it. I did go in and I did put the same type of thing around this. So I now have current students, add students, and search for student. But if I grab a student, let's grab here Lola Broadhead. And if I click on delete, of course, she'll be gone. But if I click on edit, all of these have now changed. So every one of these is now the equivalent of a text box or box. So if I change this to Jane Smith, J Smith at google.com, and I change your graduation date to 2024 and click save, you'll see that it's all changed. So that's what we want to get to. Now, just so you know, I consider the app that we're working on here to be an incomplete app. Why? Well, we clicked edit, we made changes, but notice if I refresh, it goes back to what it was before. So our changes are not persisting. I've talked to Mr. Gudmisted about this and talked to him about creating some additional videos in the future where we use something like local storage, all right, where you would be able to actually save this stuff and have it persist. All right. Okay. So that works. We didn't break anything, so I can still add a student. And I'll put in here 2028 and search in here. And you'll see that she has been added with 2028. And if I search, you'll notice that 2028 has been added here. So if I look for that, and I think we had another one, I think there was a Lola, but I don't remember. Yep, there's Lola. So everything is still working. So our add students works, our search students works. We can delete, all right? But again, it is not persisting in that once we go and refresh, everybody's back again. All right. Okay. So let's look at what had to be done to make this work. And I'm going to start by going into students.js. Move this down a little bit. And I'm going to go back yesterday. But we want to come in and we want to set edit mode. Okay, so that is put in as a React hook. Edit mode and set edit mode. It is false by default because edit mode is not made true until you go in and click the edit button for one of the students. All right, and you'll notice going along with that, that if we do click the edit button for one of the students, we set it to true. All right, which also means that sooner or later, we have to set it back to false. All right, what does that mean? Well, when you go up here, you'll notice when we're saving the student, we're not editing him or her anymore. So we're setting it to false right here. All right. And again, all I'm trying to do is walk you through the logic here. So again, the first thing we did was we came in and we set a hook. Now, one of the things that Mr. Gudmiston mentions in his lectures, and I probably have as well, is there's a lot of refactoring that should take place in this program. What do I mean? Well, as examples, save student, this should be its own component. All right. Anything that we're doing an action on should be in its own component, like in the app.js in here. All of the data should be in its own component. Save students should be in its own component. Search students should be in its own component. All right. Add students should be in its own component, even though some of those components, remove students should be in its own component, and update should be in its own component. All right. So even though some of those components, in fact, most of them would be very small, that's not to say that in the future you wouldn't want to expand on this program and these might get a lot bigger. All right. So the advantage of making, of componentizing, if that's a word, or making components here are more than one-fold. One is it breaks up the program. Another is it makes app.js smaller, which it should be. All right. Also, you could have different people working on each component in the program and then put them together. And that's typically the way it works in a bigger application anyway. All right. So again, taking it from the top, as I mentioned to you, the first thing I did to get this to work, and this isn't a big thing, but just so you know, I put this in as 2 lines right here. I could have put FA warning, comma, FA magic wand sparkles and put it on 1 line. It doesn't really matter. All right. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So again, these are our hooks. And as mentioned previously, just a minute ago, this is breaking a principle called dry. Do not repeat yourself, because you'll notice we have these 4 hooks here. And if I go into app.js and I go up to the top, Well, lo and behold, all right, somewhere in here, I thought it was here, maybe it's not, but we have the same things in more than one place in our program. That's not a good idea. You should strive not to do that. All right, that is the principle. Do not repeat yourself. So we added this, all right, and I added this use effect. Why? Well, look at this. What this is doing right here is this is initializing first name, last name, email, and grad year to the empty string, each one of them. Well, if I go in and run the program, you've already seen this. So if I run this and I click edit, I don't want each one of those to be empty. All right. And what I'm saying is, maybe I only want to change this and it should be ADIS instead of Addy. All right. Well, why should I have to retype in this and this and this? That's a big waste. All right. So, I mean, this works. Okay. But there are better ways that it could be written. And now that I look at it too, when you look at this, there really probably should have been a cancel button right here. All right. Which just said if you weren't going to do anything, just cancel back out of this. All right. Now, if I go over to here, you'll notice it didn't stop here. So I could put all 10 of these into into edit mode if I wanted to. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to refresh it here. All right. But again, you start to think when you've got an application like this, how could I make it better? All right. These are just some of the things that come to mind. So since they're empty and we don't want them to be, we're doing another use effect here. Remember, we did use effect previously because we didn't want to have that button that said show students or save students or whatever the heck it was called. We had that green button originally, boom, you had to press the button. And then when you press the button, you got your student data. All right. Well, then we replaced that with use effect in our app.js. We're having a similar thing that we're creating right here, this use effect that's inside of students. And what it's saying is, even though we had set these up as hooks to have nothing in them, we're telling it now to go in and grab whatever was in first name, whatever was in last name, whatever was in email, and whatever was in grad year. All right. Okay. Now, in order to actually be able to do this, and we looked at this a little bit yesterday, but I'm going to come down here anyway. And this right here says if you're not in edit mode. I believe when I put that in originally, I put that in with a less than sign. That should be in a curly brace. But this says if you're not in edit mode, and you know what? Everything that you see in here, all of this stuff through the ending curly, that's the stuff we had in there originally. Not a thing was changed. This just says if you're not in edit mode, show the first name, the last name, the email, and the grad year for each one of the people or each one of the students that we have in here. All right. But if you are in edit mode, now we want to change these. Now what we're doing in here for each one of the students, and the code is the same for all four of the things. The only thing that changes is here it's first name, then it's last name, then it's email, and then it's grad year. All right. But every time it's this, then this, I'm sorry, starting here, so every one of these, it's the LI with a list group item text center. It's an input with a type of text. It's a class name of form control. The value is either first name, last name, email, or grad year, and the on change is the same, except rather than always setting first name, down here you'd be setting last name, then setting email, and then you'd be setting grad year. The one other little change that we made is if you're working with the email, I set the type to email. That does a little bit of extra validation. But again, there is the setup. for the first name. There is the setup for the last name. So again, what changed was previously this said first, and so did this. Other than that, there's no changes between, whoops, between this one and this one. And then going down to here, again, we did make the type email to put a little bit of validation in there. All right. And this is email instead of first name or last name. And so is this. And then finally, the same type of thing, whoops, the same type of thing in here for the grad year. All right. Now, the other thing that got put in here was this button. And this is the save button. Now, you'll notice that up here, when we did this, when we did it up here saying we're not in edit mode, what did we have? We have a delete button here, and we have an edit button here. Well, once we're in edit mode, those don't make a lot of sense. Probably could have left the delete button in there, but he didn't, so I didn't. Instead, you've got a save button in here that we're adding. It's just a gray button. When you click it, you call Save Student. What does that do? All right, it comes up here. The first thing we're doing, because we just clicked the Save button, all right, is we're setting our edit mode to false. All right, and then we're coming in, for lack of better words, we're building an updated student object. All right, this is basically saying whatever we put in there, put it into the first name hook. Whatever we put in there, last name hook. In there, email hook. In there, grad year hook. Now, we're not allowing the student here or the user here to either monkey with the student ID, and since that's a primary key, that's a good idea. We're also not letting the user monkey with the image. So you'll notice with both of those examples right there, with both of those examples, since we are doing it that way, we can just say props.student. And the intelligence in here does pick it up. All right. Now, since we're doing some stuff in here with use effect, we also had to add it up here. All right, we had to add it here so we could use it down there. Not like that's a big thing one way or the other, but I just wanted to show you that. All right. Now, the only other thing that's really in here that we haven't talked about, okay, is we've got a thing in here called update student. All right. And when you look at it, it's not in here because notice we're saying props.update student. We're passing that back. We're passing that student that we just updated. We're passing it back to app.js. All right. And there's our update student. Now, to do that, what are we doing? We're mapping through every student that we have. And what we're telling it is, if you find a student that has been updated, change the current student that you're on to the updated student. And if it hasn't been updated, just make it the student. And when you get done, call Save Students. Now, literally, that is it. So what I want to do is take a couple minutes to run through with you everything that's in app.js, everything that's in student.js, and everything that's in addstudent.js. I'm not going to take the time to go through these. All right, I kind of wrote those in front of you yesterday. That's the one on top for the current students. There's one that's just like it for add students. There's another one just like it for search students. The only difference is the color that we put in here. All right, for the add students, it was green because we used a green button. And for the remove students, it was blue, I believe. All right, or red, I don't know, whatever. I guess, whatever. All right. So I'm not going to go through those, but let's take this from the top. So this is our app.js. So as I said, taking it from the top, we brought in Bootstrap. We brought in that Nano ID, and Bootstrap was just because we used a lot of Bootstrap in this program. Nano ID is we created what's called a GUID, a global user identifier, GUID. All right, and that created that for us. We imported React. Again, technically, this part of it right here is not mandatory anymore. It was mandatory, I think, till about version, like 2 versions ago, you had to put that in. You don't anymore. But most people, including me, still do put it in. All right, we've got use state in there, meaning we're going to be using those state hooks, and use effect. And again, in here, we're doing that so that we got rid of that save student button, so that as soon as we begin to run the program, it immediately goes in and shows us the data right away. We also put in Lodash in here. All right, and that we used during one of our mappings. We'll go over that in just a bit. All right. Then we added app.css and components/student.css. Probably didn't even need the student. I think what I did is in the student.css, I wrote stuff that probably should have went in there. Biggie one way or the other. But we did come in and try to do a little bit of refactoring of the code, in that we came in and wrote a components, or created a components folder under our source folder. And in that components folder, we have 4 files: add student.css, add student.js, student.css, and student.js. So there was a minimal amount of refactoring that went on in here. All right. And again, when we import all this stuff in here, that basically is going to help make some of the stuff that's in there available in this method. All right. Then in here, because we have the search inside of app.js, we brought in Font Awesome, and the FA, which you probably have already guessed, stands for Font Awesome search. All right. Then we've got our hooks in here. All right. And these hooks, in fact, I don't need this one. I thought I was going to need that in here, and I don't. So I can get rid of that. So we've got our all students. Remember what all students is. Okay, all students takes everything that's in here. To start with, that's our 10 records. And it fills up all students with our student data. Search, which gives us the result of our student data. And you'll notice each of these was initialized to null. All right. And I mean, there's a lot of things you could have initialized these to. We could have made it even an empty array like this. So there's a lot of different things that could have been done right there. All right. Just made them null for each one. Keywords. And again, when you remember what keywords is, that's anything that I put in here. So if I have multiple first names or multiple last names, so there's Rona, Nell, etc. So Rona, fingers on the right keys, Rona, Nell, and let's grab somebody else in here, Gorler. And if we search for them, we get those 3 back: Rona, Nell, and Gorler. All right. Those were the key words that we ended up putting in there. So that's what these are. So it could be as small as nothing. It could be several things. All right. The other thing, and I think I mentioned this before, is in our grad year, technically, we could have set the grad year to the current year, or we could have set the grad year to 0 or to something else. I just wanted to make sure there was literally nothing in it at the get-go, which is the reason I set it to the empty string. All right, then we had our data. And remember, to provide a GUID, or a global user ID, for each user, this is how we did it. All right. So we literally we went out to mockaroo.com, and that's how we got this for each one of those 10 students. Each student's first name, each student's last name, each student's email address. All right, so that's how we got all of that information. All right, I went out to, I think I mentioned this to you, but there is literally a site it's called something like "This person does not really exist." That's where I got the images from. In the grad year, I just made them up. So that was that input data. Then again, this was our use effects. This use effect rather, this is what we put in because previous to this, we had a button that was either called show students or save students. You had to press that button. So at the beginning, when you ran this, you didn't see the students. Now you do. All right. We also added to the end here an empty array, which means call this whenever our data changes. All right. Then we had our save students. This is actually, as it shows here, doing two things. It is making sure that whatever students holds in here, we are setting all of our students to that and our search results to that. That should be whatever students we currently have in our list of students. So we're making sure both all students and search results start with everything. Then for our search itself, we went in there, and as you can see, we started with that keywords array. I already mentioned to you what that is. All right. So if we do put in there, like I showed you, Rana and Rona, and then whatever the other name was, it gets put in there and it's a big string. It might have a blank space between each one, but it's a string. So then we take it and we convert it here from a string, right, to an array. That's what we're doing here. So if I had that Rana and Rona in a string, it would now be an array called keywords array, and keywords array 0 would be equal to Rana, and keywords array 1 would be equal to whatever the other one was. All right. Okay, then we checked to see if there was a graduation year. Okay, and we just pushed it there if it was. Why? Because when you think about it, grad year grad year is something that we're not entering. All right. In other words, when we search, we're grabbing something from a drop down. You've seen this already. So if I come in here to search, I don't enter anything in here. I come in there and do this. So if I put in that, I should get 2 students back. I guess I get a bunch of them back. All right. Oh, I still have these in here. So if I get rid of them, and now I have 2 students, and they're my 2 from 2021. All right. So now we come in and say, did we have some keywords? What that is literally saying is either did we put something in here, or does this not say select grad year? If this is empty and this says select grad year, this should have all of our students in there, and it does. All right. So if there is something in there, we want to work our way through it. And what this is doing is it's trying to do a matching. And it doesn't know if what we're trying to match on is first year or I'm sorry, first name, or its last name, or it's the grad year. So it's checking all 3 of those. If it finds a match, it says, yep, true, we found it. If it gets all the way through and it doesn't find a match, nope, we didn't find it. All right. And then we set our search results with those search results. So either it's going to be 1 or more students if there was a match, or it's going to be all students. So if we had a match, it's going to be here. If there was no match, basically, it's going to return everybody. All right. When we add a student, okay, remember what this is basically the operator. What this says is give me all of my current students, and then at the end, add new student. That's exactly what we want to do here. And we're calling this updated students, so it's a new array. Then when we save it, updated students is going to replace whatever was, whatever our array was in there previously. In a similar manner, we've got remove student. All right, and we're passing in the student we want to delete. And what we're doing here is we're filtering. We're building an updated students array, and we're telling it to include everyone except the one that you want to delete. All right, and that updated students array is again what we save. So after we hit the delete button, that student should be gone. All right. The update again works in a similar way. We just looked at that a little bit ago. All right. And with that, this is the student we want to update. So again, we are mapping through the entire array, the array of students. And if the current student is equal to the updated one, then we want to replace that student with the updated student. Otherwise, there's no replacement to do. Finally, we save with that updated students array. All right, that was the logic. And then in here, all right, what you might find a little confusing is this in here. This is basically allowing the communication between app.js and student.js to take place. This is saying for the student, all right, basically it's not saying to call these, but it's saying make all these available, for lack of better words. All right. This was the search. And as it says, we could search by first name or by last name. One of the things we talked about in here was class is a JavaScript name. This is JSX. All right, so if we want to write JSX, which allows us to put our HTML in with our JavaScript for React here, we can't use some of the JavaScript keywords. So class becomes class name. For becomes HTML4. There are other ones as well. All right, so this was the search first name or last name. And this was the search for graduation year. All right. This is where Lodash came in because there's no really good way to search for something that's inside of a that is inside of a drop-down list. It's not that this couldn't have been done without Lodash. It still could have, but it would have involved a lot more code. So we went in and brought in this third-party thing. And I should mention, it's not a big thing, but just so you see it, Lodash was already available to us. How do I know that? Because if I go into this node modules and I go down to the L's, it's pretty big here. So let me jump down P Lodash. It already was in there. All right. We had to still bring it into our program. All right. But the actual code itself was already out there. All right. And then we had the button for our search. Again, as Mr. Gudmested mentioned, and I agree with him, there should be some refactoring done here by taking most of the stuff that you see here and breaking it down into components. We probably could have knocked this app.js down so that rather than having it be 234 lines, it probably would have been closer to 40 to 50 lines. All right. Okay. Next is our add student. So let's look at that one next. All right. So in here, again, importing because we're using that in here. We're using use state. We're not using use effect in here. So it's not in here. All right. We brought in the CSS file and Font Awesome. This is in here, the plus circle, because that's what we're using when we're adding something. Here's our React hooks. So again, you'll notice we've got these React hooks. This first name, last name are both in add student and they're in student. This is what I mentioned before and how Mr. Gudmested had said, we are basically violating the DRY principle, DRY, which means do not repeat yourself. You will hear about that through your career at Rankin. You'll probably hear about it if you're taking the AWD 1100 class with me in spring. You'll probably hear it again. All right. But these were our hooks: first name, last name, email, grad year. This was a special hook because that was the one where we came in, if you remember, and we used a file upload control. And we used that file upload control so that we were able to go out. We could have even gone out to the internet if we wanted to and put in a URL for an image. All right. We've got this do work thing right here. And what's that doing? As it says right here, we are constructing right there a new student. All right. So when we do that, remember that when we put that in, we're only putting in first name, last name, email, image, and graduation year. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. We are not ourselves adding the ID. So we've got to make a call to Nano ID. So that's called. All right. Okay. So we are constructing a new student object here, and we're using props so that we can pass that new student object. Notice props.add student. And again, where's add student? It's in here. There's add student. So when you want to go and basically be able to access something in one method, in another method, you're going to be doing some work with props. And as I mentioned the other day, the nice thing about JavaScript itself, and we are still writing JavaScript, is unlike most other programming languages, you can pass not only regular parameters, but you can actually pass functions, all right, back and forth. And that's kind of what we're doing here, all right? This was our image update right here, which is basically grabbing the image that we took, all right? And then as far as displaying it, all right, this should look familiar. It's not the same thing, but it's similar to what we just looked at a little bit earlier today when we were doing the update. But again, class name, HTML4, there was our first name. Then we had our last name. Then we had our email. Then we had our grad year. All right. And the last thing we had to worry about which was in here. And that was that file upload. And it's a little hinky, but when you look at it in here, all right, on change, we called image update, which basically said, bring that image in. All right. We had a button in here. Something here to add the student, and you click that button to add. It was calling that do work. We looked at do work already, and if you remember, what do work did was it constructed a brand new student object based on what we put in for each one of the what we put in for each one of the students. All right. Now, I don't have to do this, but I was going to show you something anyway, and that is right here. Like I said, this isn't that big a thing, and I'm actually going to remove it in just a second. But I wanted to show you something here. Let's see, where are we? Yes, it would be in here. All right. When we added all of this stuff that you see, so the first name, the last name, etc. In fact, I'm not even going to put it in, but what I could have put in right here, I could have added another one right here with a label. I'm sorry, with the ID. And it would have shown you that even for a brand new student, when they are being created, they would have an ID already. And they would have an ID because we called nano ID. All right. So finally, let's look at students. Again, like I said, this is 234 lines. This is 110 lines about, and this is 120 lines. So there is definitely some refactoring that could go on in here. All right. So this was our student.js. So basically, the warning and the sparkles, well, the warning was for what? That was for the delete. This was for the edit. So that was the work that we wanted to be able to do with a student. All right. We looked at this a little earlier today, but we added a hook called edit mode that was invoked via a call to set edit mode, and we set it to false by default. We set it to false by default. All right. And the reason that we did that was you don't want to be in edit mode when you bring the program up. You don't want to be in edit mode until you literally come in here and click an edit button. All right. And that's what we were telling it right there. All right. So again, these are our hooks for first name, last name, email, and grad year. We put use effect in here. As I mentioned, we are taking all these and defaulting them basically to empty, these four. So here we're telling it to use what was in there previously for the first name, the last name, the email, and the grad year. So when we bring this up, again, you've seen it already, but if I click here for Joella, all of Joella's information is in here already. All right, we've got a save student where, as it says, this is a student that's been updated. All right, so in other words, we pressed edit. Okay, so we were in edit mode, but now we click that save button. So the first thing we want to do is get out of edit mode. We do that in line 22 by setting this, as you can see right here, by setting this to false. All right. And then we go and we construct the updated student. So what this is doing in here, what this is doing is it is grabbing these four values that we put in there. All right. It already has the image. It already has the student ID. So it's just grabbing those. If we were to come in here and put in the student ID, all right, we should make sure that we make that a label or a read-only field, because that is going to eventually go into a database. And if you don't know what a database is, don't worry about it. We learn about it more next semester. All right. But it's called a primary key. It's a unique way to identify everyone. You'd say like a social security number. Yes. But a social security number is actually a terrible primary key. Even though it's unique, a primary key should be what's something that's known as being unintelligible. And what that means is if somebody finds out your primary key, they shouldn't be able to do much of anything with it. If somebody finds out my social security number, there's a lot of stuff they can do with it. Even if they find out my rank and ID number, there's probably at least a few things they could try to do with it. I don't really know. All right. And after we do all this stuff and we construct our updated student, we call update student, which again is back in our app.js. So we use props to pass that back. All right. And then finally, as you can see right here, this was the output area, so to speak. We used cards here. There was our image. And again, we looked at this earlier. So this was, if we're not in edit mode, we said just show the information. And this stuff, they're LIs, they're basically being shown right here as the equivalent of labels. In other words, they look like this. I can't go in and change this. I can highlight it, but I can't, I can't change what's in there. All right. On the other hand, if we are in edit mode, and again, we looked at this earlier, I know that. All right, if we are in edit mode, all right, then take all these four things for first name, last name, email, and grad year, convert them into text boxes so that we are able to make changes. All right, even though those changes won't persist. And that's everything. All right. So that's basically, I think I've gone over the logic and I've gone over what everything should look like in here. Or at least hopefully I have. All right. So there's one more thing that we're supposed to do today. Two more things. I'm sorry. So let's go back and look at what we had here at the beginning. All right. We're going to use this video. I'm going to base this on David Gray. All right. And I'm going to create two apps that have nothing in them, basically. I'm just going to create starter apps. One that I'm going to push to Netlify, one that I'm going to push to GitHub Pages. All right, so that's what we're going to do after the break right away. Afterwards, as it says, I'm going to give you a demo of what we're going to go over in this class. Now, I've got to look and see if I've got this here. I was contacted by a new student who's going to be starting in spring. And he said, hey, can you give me some starter material, for lack of better words? And I sent him a whole bunch of stuff, and I've got to find the email. Once I find the email, I will send it to all of you as well. I don't know where it is, but it had a bunch of, if you want to start going in and taking a look at different resources online for C# or whatever, you can. Do you have to? Of course not. No, you don't have to. But if you are interested in it, and sometimes at least people are, all right? So I will look for that during the break, okay? So we will quickly, after the break, go over and we will take this. In fact, I'll do them right now just so you can see them. I'm going to get rid of these. I made these yesterday. All right. So I sent you all these two things today. One was how to save something to Netlify, and one was how to save something to GitHub Pages. All right. And for Netlify, I'm going to create this. I'm going to create a new empty app that's called React Deploy Netlify FML, but I'm going to use JPS because those are my initials. So let me copy that. Come in here. Don't know what's happening there, but I think it's just removing those. All right. So make a new folder. And as you can see, instead of FML, I'm going to call it JPS. So this, all right, that was a message on something else. So this is my Netlify one. All right. And then I'm going to come in, and the other one that we said we're going to work with, it's got almost the same name, but it's React Deploy GitHub Pages FML. Replaced with, and I'm going to come in here, right here. I'm going to do my git bash here. Oops. And we'll do our npx create react app dot. All right. And that's going to start it. I don't know if I can start creating two of them at once, if it'll let me or not. Never tried, so I'm going to now. So again, git bash here. npx create react app dot. And it looks like it'll do them both. All right. And during the break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to GitHub and I'm going to make two repos. One is going to be called React Deploy, GitHub Pages JPS, and the other one, which will be called React Deploy Netlify rather, JPS. So that's what we're going to do after the break. It's 8:55. Let's take 10 and come back at 9:05, please. Right back.
All right, it's 9:05. I'm going to follow the steps again that Mr. Cray, Dave Cray had in his tutorial. Now, if I were to bring this up, we don't have to, but I'm going to anyway. That if I brought this up in code, and I'm not going to do anything except run it for now. You're going to see that it's going to look exactly, it's going to have the logo for React on it. All right. And it's going to be spinning and it's got the message there. That's it. All right. I just created an out of the box project. All right. So I'm going to stop that right now. And I also went and created a GitHub repo for it. All right. React underscore deploy underscore netlify underscore JPS. And I'm going to attempt to put this one out onto Netlify right now. All right. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to come in here. There's files I don't need. And what I mean is if I go into package.json, I'm going to disagree with what Dave Gray put in his video. He says that you should get rid of these three things and this. I got rid of these three things with no problem, and I'm going to show you how in a second. But when I tried to put it to Netlify, I got an error until I put that one back in. So I'm going to remove these three things in here. How am I going to do that? I'm going to come in here, and you've seen me install a few things. Now I'm going to uninstall. Now I could just say uninstall, and I could bring in this one right here. All right, you don't need, let's see, right there. Okay, and you don't put in the double quotes. So I can put in that one just like that, and I could hit enter and it would uninstall it. And then I could do it again with the second one. Then I could do it again with the third one, or I can just hit the space bar here and bring all three of these in at once. All right, so there's all three of them. What should happen when I hit enter is fairly quickly, you should see these things, three things disappear from our dependencies. All right, it's interesting. It didn't ask me to do that before, but that's okay. What it's doing there, it's, and it did not install them. So testing library just DOM, testing library React, testing library user event. I don't know why it wouldn't have, but it may be that these are gone already and I just have to refresh this. So let me close package.json and open it again. They're still there and I don't know why. Did this yesterday and I had no problem with it. Why is it doing that? Do you want to allow this app from an unknown publisher to make changes to your device? Yes. I don't know why I would get this, but fine, uninstall that. That's a different editor for a totally different software. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to try doing them one at a time and see what happens.
All right, it says no such file or directory. Well, it's not going to hurt to put them in there, but it's bloat. And what I mean is it's stuff in here you really don't need. It's not hurting anything though. All right, he just suggested that you remove them. And it's interesting because I did it yesterday with a project and had absolutely no problems with it. I ran over everything before I did this, but it is what it is. So let me come back into here. And you may or may not be aware of this, but normally we come into here and we do our get init and our get this and all the other stuff. Well, that's fine, but I can also do it right from my terminal here. All right, so I'm going to do a get init. Notice I don't have a Git folder here, or I should in a matter of seconds. All right, then if I do my git add dot, okay, my git commit minus M, which is the, I'll just say initial commit. All right, now it's saying that there's nothing to commit. I'm not sure why, but that's okay. And I'm going to come in. In fact, let's try doing it the other way and see if I get different messages. All right, so we'll come in here and we'll do our git. We've already got a git init. So I'll do a git add dot, a git commit minus M init commit. Okay, it looks okay to me. And finally, I want to come in and from out of here, I need that line here so that I can bring in my remote add. Says it already exists. Let's double check. I may have done it before the break. Git remote minus V. Yep, it's all there. All right, so let's do our git push minus U origin. And again, I say master. Most of you probably say main. Okay, it's got all that done. Let's exit from here. Let's refresh. And it should be here now. And it is. So there's my React deploy Netlify JPS. Okay, nothing new there. All right, this is all stuff that we've done before. All right, now I want to go out to Netlify. So let's go out. It's actually app.netlify.com, I believe. Okay, so I'm out here and I want to basically come in and I want to add a new site. I want to import an existing project. All right, using GitHub. And I'll have to search for it, or I might have to search for it. So it was called, let's see. If I type in Netlify, try it again, Netlify underscore JPS, hopefully it'll find it. There it is. So all I should have to do with this then is click on it, and it should fill this stuff in. It says that we want to do an npm run build and a build. Now, this may fail, and if it does, I'll show you why it fails. All right. I don't want to add anything extra, so I'm just going to deploy it. It may fail. If it fails, I'll show you why, and we'll fix it right away. All right. I'm following the instructions of Mr. Gray, but it came back down here and it said that it failed when I tried doing it like this yesterday. So I'll show you what I did to fix it. Maybe it will work. It says it's building. This takes a little longer than when we tried doing this with a website because there's so many more internal files that it's working with. So if you try doing this, let's see if it succeeds or fails. Okay, it says published. All right, well, okay. But it's whimsical, starburst, etc. So I'm going to click on site configuration and change site name. And I'm going to make it just what I just showed you. And that is, I'm going to change the name or attempt to change the name to React Deploy Netlify. It doesn't like underscores, but I think it'll take dashes. So React Deploy Netlify JPS. And it should come in there as then React https://react deploy netlify jps .netlify.app. Save. It should come in and change the name. I like to refresh it anyway to be sure. Now, if I click this, there it is. So it's out there, and it actually is out there now under Netlify. Now, I want to mention something to you, and that is when I tried doing it like this yesterday, it didn't work. So if you do this, and here's the address for it, all right, if you do this and it doesn't work, if that happens, then go back into your project, all right, and you may have to run the command before you do all this stuff, npm run build, because that creates a build folder in here. Now, it worked just fine not doing that today. Yesterday, when I tried to publish it, it gave me an error. So I went back and ran this npm run build, which made a build folder here. After I did that, I had to go back in again and do a git add dot and a git commit -m, and I put in here ran a build command. Then I did my git push again, and then I went back into Netlify and ran the same steps I just showed you, boom, then it worked just fine. So why it worked today without having to do that, there is no build folder here. And why I had to do it yesterday and put in a build folder, I'm not sure, because it's the same program basically that I'm deploying. So that's the first one. All right, let me do an npx heal minus port 3000. Now I'm going to attempt to take the other one now and bring that one up and put that into GitHub Pages. Okay. So here's the first one, the Netlify one. And now, like I said, we're going to attempt to do basically the same thing, but with GitHub Pages. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages, and this is how Mr. Gray ends his video, the last minute or two. He says, people often ask me, are you better off deploying to Netlify or deploying to GitHub Pages? There's advantages and disadvantages to both. The biggest advantage to using Netlify, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it was pretty simple. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot you had to do. There's going to be more that we have to do to get it to work in GitHub Pages. I'm just telling you that right now. All right. But the advantage of using GitHub Pages, though, is that everything, you have everything in your GitHub account, basically. You don't have to worry about putting something out there on another package like Netlify. All right. So let's go in there and bring this one up. So this is the React deploy GitHub Pages. So I'm going to open that with code. And again, just to prove to you, there's, whatever they say, nothing up my sleeve or whatever. It's going to be the same program. We could take any program and do this. I'm just grabbing a brand new one that I created and doing it. But these are the steps. And again, remember, 10 points of your homework are going to be you either deploying the app that, the React code along that we've been doing, deploying it on GitHub Pages or deploying it on Netlify. All right, so we've got the new project. Okay. And again, we could try to do that uninstall. I'm not even going to do that. But what we do have to do here is we have to come in and add GitHub pages. If you look right here in package.json, all right, these are our dependencies right there, and they say development dependencies. Don't have anything in, anything in here that says GitHub pages. Let me close this. And again, these are in the instructions that I gave you. I'm going to put in npm node package manager, I for install, gh pages, GitHub pages, -d. We want to put it in there as a development dependency. It'll take a second or two. Okay, boom. Now, if I go back to my package.json, I've now got this that wasn't in here before. It's telling me we've got a developer dependency and it's GitHub pages. All right, so that's the first thing we have to do. All right, then we have to go in and we have to add, let me close this so you can see it. We've got to come in and add some stuff to this file. Like what? Well, we come in and underneath where it says version, so I'm going to hit enter here and put in a new line 3. And notice that each one of these lines that's in here, except the last one, all right, and sometimes even the last one has a comma on the end. This is going to tell it in GitHub pages where we want it to run from. So I have to give it a home page. That's what that is. That's what home page means. Now, what you want to put in there then is https:// then next your GitHub name. Mine, of course, is JP Scott Rankin. All right. And then .github.io/ and then what you're going to call this out on GitHub pages. All right. And I'm going to call mine React deploy GH pages. Just like that. That's fine. All right. So I've got all that and I'm getting an error right now, again, because on the end, I do not have a comma. So you have to put in a line there. It's best to put it under the version and in double quotes, the word homepage, then a colon as a delimiter, then in double quotes, https:// followed by your GitHub name, again, mine being JP Scott Rankin, .github.io, all right, and then the name. Now, that shouldn't surprise you because, if we go back into GitHub and you create a brand new project, that's what it does. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do. Now, while we're still in this file, package.json, we want to go down into scripts and we have to add 2 scripts. I'm going to hit enter here and enter in 2 lines. The first says pre-deploy npm run build. It's that same command I told you about before. It's telling it to build this before it runs it. Then we want to deploy it. We want to use GitHub pages, which is our developer thing, and we want to build that into GitHub pages. All right, and again, it's giving me an error because I don't have a comma there. So I added this line right here, the home page line with a comma on the end. And under scripts, I added these 2 scripts, both with commas on the end, double quote, 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 and let's make sure double quote, double quote, double quote, double quote. All right. Okay, so I've got all that. So now I'm going to come in here and do a file, save all, and then I'm going to come back up here so you can watch me do it. And again, I'm going to do a git init, a git add dot, a git commit -m, and we'll call it initial commit. All right. Same stuff we did before. I'm not going to push it yet because I did not go out and create a repo yet with this name. I'm going to do that right now. See if I do a control C if it copied it. So I'm going to go out right now to GitHub. Create a new repo. Me as the owner. See if it's saved it or not. Looks like it. So again, you can see from the beginning, React underscore deploy underscore GitHub underscore pages JPS. Now that's the repo name, but I said what I wanted to save it under. Let's give it that same name. So in other words, I think I called it this. I called it React hyphen deploy hyphen GH pages. I think that's what I called it in here. Okay, let's look. According to this, that's the name of my folder. Oh, the other one was Netlify. This is what I want to call it. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work. So I'll copy that. I'll go back into GitHub pages and I'll call it the same thing. Okay, all right. And then click create repository. And one of the things you'll notice, as I already mentioned, is this. That git remote thing, it's pretty much what we put in here before. That's what we just put in. What we put in right there for our homepage. All right, I'm going to grab this line, copy it to the clipboard, make sure that our remote is set. Again, I'll go back into here, paste that in, double check to make sure it worked. And it looks like it did. Now I'll do my git push. Well, that isn't good. It says that this is not found. I might have to give it that other name. Let's see. What is the name of the folder here? That is the name. Let's try it from here. Telling me that that's not found. Try this again. Good gravy. Says it's not found. Now, it could be something as simple as just having to refresh here, but I don't see why it would have to. I'm going to copy all these three lines, except I don't, mine's master. So let me copy that. Son of a gun. It says it doesn't match anything. GitHub, JP Scott Rankin, React, deploy, GitHub, pages, JPS. Hmm. Well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try doing this. Let me go in and just make some changes here. What do I mean? Well, let's see. I'm going to try changing the name of this from React Deploy, GitHub Pages, etc. I'm just going to change this to React Deploy, GitHub Pages. I'm going to remove the underscore JPS from that. And it's going to want me to close from here first. Oh, it's open in here. That's why. So I've got to exit this as well. Now it'll work. All right, now I've renamed it. Now I'm going to bring it up again. And I'll open it up again in code. But I believe at least I have to change the name now because I don't have the underscore JPS in here anymore. So it looks like that. And I'll bet you it failed because I should have called it that. But I'm gonna give it the same name here. React deploy GitHub pages, just like that. And I'm gonna call it the same thing here. I shouldn't have been monkeying around with names, but I did. All right. So let me do a file save all here. All right. Let me go back in, and now I've got to change and add a new GitHub repo. Okay, React deploy GitHub pages. Right. Again, I'm going to grab this. In fact, I'll grab all three of these. So, okay. Master. Son of a gun. Let's see if we can deploy the other one to GitHub pages. In fact, what I'm going to do, I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to literally kill this project right here, and I'm going to do the whole thing again. Let's see. So while it's removing it, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call it React GH pages. That's it. All right. Then inside of here, I'm going to open this and do my npx create react app dot. All right. And I'll let that sit and work its magic for a while. It's funny, again, I did both these yesterday and really had no problems, but sometimes stuff happens, I guess. While that's waiting, I'm going to go back into GitHub here and create yet another repository. That's React GH pages. Right. And I'm going to set my remote right away. Here. All right. This come back yet? I believe it did. So let me bring this up in code. And I'm going to make the same changes I did before. In other words, I'm going to go into package.json and under the version, come in here and I'm going to add homepage. Oops, https://jp Scott Rankin / oops, no, that isn't what I wanted. All right, https jp Scott Rankin .github.io/react gh pages. All right, with a comma. Then come into our scripts and let's add our 2 script lines. Which are, again, our deploy and our pre-deploy. So build. All right, that's all done. Now, one thing I didn't do, since this was a new project, let me close this and let me come in and do a terminal, new terminal. I've got to install GH pages. So that is npm igh-pages, and I want to make it a development dependency. Okay, that should have done everything now. So let's see if we can do our git add dot, our git commit. Well, it looks better. Clear, and let's see if it's there. All right, there's our project, React-GH pages. So that's good. All right, now there's not too much more to do here. We got to go back into here. And we have to tell it to run our deploy, npm run deploy. Now, when we're done, it should say published down at the bottom when we get done, and we'll see if it does. Published. All right. Now we should be able to, and hopefully this is going to work. All right, go back into here. We're back into GitHub. I'm going to go over to settings. All right, and under settings, I should be able to go down to pages right here. And it says your site is currently being built. All right, through GH pages. It says it's currently being built, so it might take a second or two. All right. And when it does, I should be able to go out to, it's not there, to right here, put that in my address bar, oops, come on, Jeff, HTTPS, etc. And I should be able to put that into the address bar, and then hopefully at least, um, you know, it's going to show up. It says it's currently being built. I'm going to try to refresh and see if it says that it is built. Still says it's currently being built. I don't know how long this will take. It says your site is live. Click there. There it is. So I now have the same site running here. That was more of a pain in the butt than I thought it was going to be. The point is, though, that I did go and I used the instructions that I gave you, and I was able to deploy the same, well, two different projects, really, one on Netlify and one on GH Pages. So you can go out, if you want to, you can go out to here. I don't know if you can get to this one directly or not. I don't know. All right, but I've got it there twice. All right, so what we've done then is we have gone through here, we have finished our project, and we have deployed two different React apps, one to Netlify, one to GitHub Pages. So let's talk about the C# programming class that there will be for fall. All right. It is, just so you know, you may like this, you may not, but it is another Muroc text. So if I go out to muroc.com, and I look under shop books and I go to C# programming books, this is actually the book that you'll be using. And then the class you'll take in summer, which will be AWD1115, will use this book. So there are two more books. It's Muroc's 8th edition. There it is, 772 pages. My plan is to go through all 22 chapters. You won't be tested on everything. There'll be a few chapters in there we'll basically spend 5 or 10 minutes on. All right, but that's the information. You can get it print, you can get an ebook, etc. Some people have asked in the past about, well, what about the Cengage thing? This is not a Cengage text, so this doesn't apply. Probably most of your gen ed books or texts are Cengage. Now, I've already got it out here. Let me bring it up again. It timed out. So this is the table of contents. I'm not going to read them to you. I will tell you that we'll go through most, if not all, of section 1 in the first week. All right. And then we'll spend 2 or 3 weeks in here. This is probably the hardest part of the book. All right. We're going to really hit hard chapter 12 and chapter 16 in here. We'll spend a little bit of time on 13 and 15. Then we get into the database stuff, which is probably the most fun part of the class. All right. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now, there's one more thing I want to tell you about this. Two things. First, right now, and you should know this, this is what we're using for the AWD1000 class. This is Visual Studio Code. Well, guess what? We don't use Visual Studio Code. We use Visual Studio for the C# class. If you go out to visualstudio.com, okay? Now, this is not Visual Studio Code. This is Visual Studio. All right. Somewhere in here, there will be a downloads. You'll want Visual Studio 2022. Make sure you do the community edition. It's free. The other two say free trial, which means they're free for a month. All right. The difference, the biggest difference is between Visual Studio Community, which we use, and Visual Studio Professional and Enterprise, is these have things in there that you're able to do a lot of administrative things like write reports, etc., that we don't do anyway. So you'll want to do this. When you do this, it's going to come up with something that's going to look like this. I want to show you this. What I'm about to show you, we're going to do the first day of class, but I'm just showing you now in case you want to get an early start. It will bring up eventually the Video Studio installer, which looks like this. It'll fill up in just a moment. Oh, they changed the window on here. How's that? So it says that I've got an update available. I'm not going to go for it right now, but I'm going to go over where it says available here. Wow, this really changed a lot. What should come up here, what you should see in your installer, and I don't know why I'm not, but I'm not, is literally about 12 or 13 things that you can install. All right. You'll want to make sure that you install. There's three of them that you have to install, and I'll tell you right now what they are. All right. One of them will just say something like C sharp, like that. It'd be very simple. Then there's another one that will say SQL Server. That's what we'll need for the database stuff. And finally, all right, there'll be one in there that says something like ASP.NET. Now, you don't have to install that one now, but that's the one that you're going to use for the AWD1115 class that you will be taking in summer. So I'd recommend that you do it now. So when we start on day one, literally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through all this stuff. I'm going to walk you through the install process, what you have to do. I will tell you that, like most Microsoft software, this is pretty big. I think when you install everything, it's some around 10 gig. I could be wrong, but I think it was something like that, installing everything. So it'll take a while as well. All right, just so you know, it'll take up to a half an hour really to install all that. All right. And then I just wanted to show you quickly, this is the kind of thing that we're going to create. All right. So if I come in here, it looks just like what we had for Visual Studio Code, except that one's blue and this one's purple. It's going to come up and look like this. And don't worry, yours is going to be empty here because I've been working on a bunch of projects. But you're going to go to create new project, and there's going to be two kinds that we're going to create in here. We're going to create console apps, and we're going to create Windows Forms apps. So now there's more than one kind of console. So if I come to it up here and I type in console, you'll notice that it shows me a bunch more. All right. And this says a project for creating a command line that can run in .NET and Windows. That one looks good to me, so I'll click C# right there. And it asks me to give it a name, so I'll call it console test. This is all stuff we'll do together, so don't worry about it. It says, where do you want to put this? Well, I'm going to create my own folder. Then I'm just going to call test. Okay, so I'll tell it to put it in test. All right, and it says, okay, that's where you're going to put it. It's called console test, and the solution, I'm just going to call this test as well. Please look on the screen. It says my name of my project is console test. It's put in a folder on my desktop named test, and I've got a solution named test. And I'm going to click next. And it says, that's fine. Just going to leave that the way it is. And I'm going to click create. And now it created this for me. Okay. Now, is this a big thing? No. In fact, there's a better way to create it than what I just showed you. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to remove this. Okay. Now I'm going to come in and add a new project. Add project. We just did on console. We just did this one. Well, I'm going to try the other one that's right here. And if you say why, I'm going to show you. So this will be console test. All right. It's in test. Yeah, that's exactly what I want here. Click create. Come on, you. Just because of, okay, fine. Even though I removed it, it says it still exists. So I'll call it console test 2. This is the file that we want to create. All right. Now, I don't expect any of this to make sense. This is what we go over in the first week, but I'm going to put in here, all right, console dot write line. Hello and welcome to C#. Now, if I run the program right now, and I'm going to show you how you run it, it's going to, like that, it's going to actually show that on the screen, but it's going to be so fast, you won't even be able to tell that it said anything. So underneath this, I'm going to write console dot read line, which tells it to stop until I enter a character. So let me run it. And a little hard to read. Hello and welcome to C#. Hit enter. That's my first program. It's pretty simple. Okay. Now, why did I show you that? Because we're not going to spend a lot of time rating these console apps. Instead, we're going to come in here and I'm going to add another project. All right. And now I want to type in here Windows Form app. And I always get, like I said, these two mixed up as far as which one. I'm going to use the first one here, Windows Forms app. Okay, and we're going to call this, we call the other one console test. This will be form test. All right. Most of the apps that we create are going to look more like this one looks. Now, there's nothing here yet, but we're going to come over to here and I'm going to click View and Toolbox. And now I can take anything that's in here and it'll come up, there it is, and I can drag it over. So in other words, if I want to put a label out there, there's a label. Okay. And I want to close that and put in my toolbox. All right, so there's a label. If I want to come in and put in a text box, there's a text box. And if I want a button, there's a button. Okay. And I'm going to put one more label in here. Okay. Now, I don't expect this to make sense. I just wanted to show you what we're going to be doing. That's all. All right. First of all, it's kind of an ugly gray background here. So I'm going to make it look a little nicer. Clicking on my form, I'm going to go out here to background color, and I'm going to set it to yellow. Okay. Then I've got these two labels, but they're both pretty little. I want them to be bigger. So I'm going to click on both of them there, and I'm going to go out to where it says auto size, and I'm going to set it to false. And now I can make these bigger. So I now have two labels, one here and one here. Okay. Just so you can see them better, I'm going to change the color of those as well. Okay. And right here, this is my text box. Okay. I'm going to make all of these bigger so you can read them. Okay. When I type some some stuff in here in just a moment. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to type something in here. This is just going to say simply, this is a label. So what I'm going to put in here, instead of label 1, which is what it says right now, I'm going to change that from label 1 to enter your name here. And there it is. All right. And then here, I want it to say welcome followed by your name. So right now, I don't want anything in there. Okay. And this is where you're going to put your name. So after I put in my name, I want to click this button. And when I click this button, what I want it to say is in here is hello, followed by whatever name I put in there. All right. I'm just trying to show you some unbelievably simple logic, even if it doesn't seem like it. So right here, I'm going to change the name of this. I don't want to call it label 1. I'll call it LBL name. Okay. This will be called, this is a text box. I'm going to call it TXT name. These are going to be my results. So I'm going to call this LBL results. And this is going to be my button. And I want to calculate something. It's not really a calculation, but I'll call it BTN calculate, and the name of the button on there. Let's make that bigger like we did everything else. We'll put the word calculate on there. All right. And when we click this, okay, I'm just trying to show you something here. So I'm going to say if, let's see, txt name dot text, if it's empty. So if it's equal to nothing, okay, then I'm going to put in a mess dot show that just says you must enter a name. No name input. All right. So if I put nothing in there, nothing at all, it's going to give me an error message. It's going to put my cursor back into my text name, and it's going to return. All right. If I get down to here, I put something in there. So I'm going to say LBL result dot text equals welcome to C# followed by the name. That's it. Okay. So let me save this and run it. Oops. It's still running the old program. I have to tell it to run the new one. Okay. So there it is. Now there's nothing in there. I click calculate. No name input. You must enter a name. And when I click OK, my cursor should start flashing in here. And it does. If I come in here and say, put in my full name, there you go. That's the kind of stuff we're going to do. Now that may have seemed hard, may have seemed simple, but what we're going to do is we're going to work on a project throughout the entire semester, and it'll be something people can understand. We're going to start from day 1, building an unbelievably simplistic payroll system, where you'll come in here instead of this, you'll have a couple boxes here and you'll say, how many hours did you work? And then there'll be another box where you'll put in how much do you get per hour. You'll click calculate and it'll tell you how much you made. Then we'll go and we'll add things like if statements, etc., that will give you things like overtime and stuff like that. So that's all the stuff that we're going to be doing next semester. Now, I don't remember where it was, but as I mentioned to you a little earlier, I got an email from a student who's going to be in the class in spring. And he said, hey, can you give me some reading materials, some other stuff that I could take a look at? So I sent him a bunch of stuff. All right, I'm going to go look for that. And once I find it, I'm going to send it to all of you as well. By next week, by sometime next week, I will have emailed all of you out the syllabus for next semester. So you'll be able to tell everything that we're going to be working on. All right. Now, similar to what we did in this class, all right, there will be hands-on tests. There will be written tests. All right. But I'm not going to give you homework and labs. In other words, I think what we'll do is I'll give you homework and the labs, we'll do those together. You will not be responsible for typing those in yourselves. You can, but you don't have to. All right. So for lack of better words, that's what you've got to look forward to. Now, I will be online for the rest of the semester, including today, but as it says, the rest of this week, so Thursday and Friday, and all of next week will be lab for you to complete the code along, any hands-on tests, written tests, labs, etc. not completed, and your electronic portfolio. Again, I'm online today. I'll be online tomorrow. I'll be online sporadically on Friday. And I will be on next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday if you have questions. And finally, again, as far as these due dates, you've seen this before. Your completed React student project is due this Sunday by midnight. Any late work you have to give me is due Sunday by midnight. Finally, your completed electronic portfolio due Wednesday by midnight. And again, I will be off on Friday. This really is the last lecture you'll have this semester, but please, if you have problems, questions on anything, feel free to contact me and I promise you, I will get back to you as soon as possible. All right. With that said, since I probably won't see or hear from most of you until the new year, 4 weeks from today, have a nice holiday, regardless of your religion or lack thereof. Have a nice break. All right. And I will see you on, I think it's January 10th, but if that changes, I'll let you know. All right. Until then, all right. Have a good one.